My name is Isabella Cruz, and a year ago, I thought I had everything. I was 32, a senior account manager at one of the top boutique marketing firms in Los Angeles, with a portfolio full of loyal clients and a resume that turned heads at networking events. I wore power suits, led million-dollar campaigns, and made more decisions before 10 a.m. than most people did in a week. But if there's one thing life has taught me, it's that confidence makes you a target, especially when you're a woman who refuses to shrink herself for anyone. Especially when you're dating a man who's threatened by your success. That man was Ethan Blake. On paper, he was charming, successful, a rising star in the same industry. He was the creative director at a rival firm, and we met at an awards gala where we were both being recognized for campaign work. Sparks flew. Flirting turned into drinks, drinks into dinners, and soon, we were inseparable. Looking back, the red flags were there from the start. He'd make snide comments when I worked late. He hated when I traveled without him. He'd sulk if I won an award he didn't. But I chalked it up to insecurity, something I thought I could soothe. The truth? Ethan didn't want a partner. He wanted a stepping stone. At work, I was a force. Clients loved me because I delivered. I listened. I understood their brands like they were my own. Over 5 years, I built a portfolio of high-value clients, luxury skincare, eco-tech startups, and fashion labels that dominated LA's influencer scene. I was damn good at what I did. Ethan knew that. And he used it. We kept our relationship quiet from our companies, though a few coworkers suspected. Mixing business and romance was always risky, but I genuinely believed we could separate the two. We were adults. Professionals. Then the cracks began to show. About 8 months into our relationship, I noticed some strange coincidences. A pitch I'd been working on for weeks suddenly appeared, almost word for word, in a rival firm's presentation. My ideas, repackaged and paraded in front of my clients. I couldn't prove anything, but my gut screamed something was off. When I confronted Ethan, he was smooth. "Babe, you think I'd steal from you? Come on. We're in the same industry. People copy everyone." I wanted to believe him. So I did. Until the day everything came crashing down. It was a Tuesday morning. I walked into the office, coffee in hand, ready for a quarterly review meeting with our COO. Instead, HR was waiting for me. "Isabella, we need to talk." Those 5 words changed my life. They said there were serious concerns about my professional conduct. That clients had complained I was leaking confidential strategy to competitors. That internal documents showed irregular access from my login at strange hours. In short, they accused me of espionage. I was floored. I laughed at first, thinking it was some kind of twisted joke. But their faces were stone cold. "Ethan?" I whispered. "Are you saying Ethan did this?" They exchanged glances. "We're not naming individuals. But based on the evidence, we have to let you go." I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. Fired. Just like that. No warning, no due process, no chance to explain. My work laptop was seized. My badge deactivated. Security walked me out of the building like a criminal. The whispers in the hallway were deafening. I didn't even get to clear out my desk. And Ethan? He didn't call. He didn't text. He ghosted me entirely. By the end of the week, the truth emerged. 3 of my highest-paying clients had transferred to Ethan's firm. Not just transferred, he had personally pitched to them, using inside knowledge from our past conversations. He knew their pain points, timelines, and budgets. He stole my clients. He stole my ideas. And worst of all, he stole my future. I spent the next few weeks in a haze. I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. My name had been blacklisted in half the agencies in town. Nobody wanted to touch a liability. Even people who'd once praised my talent stopped returning my calls. I'd been burned by the man I loved, and left with nothing to show for it. But I wasn't going to stay down for long. Because if Ethan thought I'd just disappear, he clearly didn't know me at all. He hadn't just taken my job. He'd lit the fire inside me. And I was going to use it to burn down everything he built. I spent the first 3 weeks after getting fired hiding in my one-bedroom apartment in Silver Lake, curtains drawn, phone silenced. I lived off takeout and old coffee, alternating between rage and shame. My inbox was full of emails I didn't want to answer. Every time I thought about starting over, Ethan's smug face came to mind, how easily he discarded me like a broken tool after using everything I'd built. I had never felt so humiliated. But rock bottom has a funny way of becoming a foundation if you let it. One night, I was curled up on the couch watching mindless TV when I saw a commercial for one of the clients Ethan had stolen, using a campaign I had designed. My voiceover. My concept. Even my tagline. Only now, it had his firm's logo stamped all over it. And that's when something in me snapped. I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked into the bathroom. I looked in the mirror, really looked. My once styled hair was a frizzy mess. My face was puffy from crying. But beneath the exhaustion, I saw someone else. I saw the fire in my eyes. Ethan might have taken my job, my reputation, and my clients. But he hadn't taken my talent. He couldn't. That was mine. I'd earned every ounce of it through grit and sleepless nights and pitching to stone-faced execs who finally learned to respect me. I had clawed my way up from internships where I was fetching coffee to running million-dollar campaigns. And I wasn't about to let a manipulative narcissist erase that. So, I got to work. First, I made a list of everything I still had. It was shorter than I'd hoped, but it was something. My professional network, even if most of them were wary right now. A handful of junior creatives and freelancers who had always respected me. My knowledge of the industry and how to build strategy from the ground up. And a little bit of savings, just enough to survive for a few months. I filed paperwork for an LLC under the name Cruise and Company. Strategy. It sounded small. Unassuming. I liked that. I didn't want to draw too much attention, not yet. This wasn't about proving anything to the world. Not yet. This was about building something for myself. I started freelancing. It was slow at first, tiny social media audits, brand refreshes for yoga studios, email marketing for local bakeries. I didn't care. Every job was a brick in the foundation of my comeback. I reached out to old contacts, people I trusted, people who knew my work. Some ignored me, but a few responded. Quietly. Cautiously. Isabella. I know what happened. I never believed it. I heard the rumors. If you're building something new, let me know. I have a small brand that needs help. It's not much, but I can pay you. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I worked from my kitchen table, surrounded by coffee mugs, sticky notes, and one sad houseplant that hadn't given up on me yet. I rebranded a dog groomer's Instagram to look like a high-end lifestyle brand. I taught a boutique candle maker how to optimize her e-commerce store. I created storyboards for a vegan snack brand's TikTok campaign that actually went semi-viral. And slowly, people started to notice. One night, I got a text from Jules, one of the best graphic designers I'd ever worked with. She'd stayed out of the Ethan drama but had always had my back in silence. I've been watching what you're doing. If you're building a team, count me in. Then came Tara, a former copywriter who'd moved to freelance life after being burned out by agency politics. Let's collaborate. I'm tired of working with people who take credit for my work. Before I knew it, Cruise and Company was more than just me. We were a tiny, tight-knit team of women who'd been overlooked, dismissed, or underestimated by this cutthroat industry. And we were hungry. About 4 months in, we landed a modest but promising contract with a new sustainable skincare startup. They had funding but no direction, and their branding was a mess. We overhauled everything, from their visual identity to their tone of voice. 3 months later, they doubled their monthly revenue. We didn't just win them as a client. We won their loyalty. More small brands followed. Then mid-size ones. And then came the email that made me stop breathing for a moment. Subject: Potential campaign partnership, need full strategy proposal, the sender? Everglow Cosmetics. One of the clients Ethan had stolen from me. Except now, they weren't contacting him. They were contacting me. The brand director wrote, "We've been watching your new agency. I've always admired your work, and frankly, things haven't been the same since you left. We're preparing for a major product launch and would love to hear your ideas." My heart pounded. I stared at the screen, stunned. Everglow had been one of my favorite clients. Ethan had lured them away using everything I told him in confidence: budget details, pain points, even their CEO's personality quirks. And now, they were back in my inbox. Not just back, they were asking me to pitch. I drafted a reply, trying to keep my cool. "Thank you for reaching out. I'd be honored to meet and discuss your upcoming launch. Let's set up a time for next week." After I hit send, I screamed into a pillow and danced around my apartment. I'd been waiting for this moment. Not just revenge, but redemption. But what I didn't know yet was that Everglow's launch wasn't just another contract. It was the contract, the one Ethan had been courting for months. The one he'd bet his firm's next quarter on. The one that would decide who kept their place at the top of LA's boutique marketing elite. And I had just stepped into the ring with everything to prove. Ethan didn't know I was coming for him. But he would. The morning of the Everglow pitch, I stood in front of my mirror in a tailored navy blazer, black slacks, and my power heels, the same ones I wore to land my first six-figure contract years ago. I hadn't touched them since the Ethan debacle. But today, they felt different. Today, they were armor. My team, Jules, Tara, and Nate, our newly added data wizard, met me at the co-working space we'd rented for the big day. I'd splurged on one of the fancier downtown suites, with floor-to-ceiling windows and exposed brick walls. It looked like success. We needed every edge we could get. Because Ethan wasn't just a competitor now. He was the other finalist. Everglow had narrowed it down to two firms, Cruz & Company and Ethan Walker Strategies. I learned that bit from an inside source, Alyssa, an account manager at Everglow who used to be my mentee when she was fresh out of college. She'd texted me discreetly after our discovery meeting, "It's between you and him. I had to tell you. Don't let him win this." I didn't need the warning. Ethan was already gloating. He posted a story on his private Instagram that morning, a photo of a black Mercedes with the caption, "Pitch Day. Big wins coming #executive mode." I almost laughed. Subtle wasn't his strong suit. But that arrogance, that was fuel. The Everglow executive sat across from us in a sleek conference room overlooking the skyline. There were four of them: the CEO, Monica, the brand director, Kara, the head of sales, and a quiet guy from operations who barely looked up from his laptop. They all looked exhausted. Everglow had been struggling for a while. Their flagship moisturizer had tanked last quarter, and word around the industry was that a failed launch could sink them. Which meant they needed a miracle. And I had one. "Thank you for the opportunity," I began, standing at the head of the table. "We didn't just prepare a campaign, we designed a movement. One that repositions Everglow not just as a skincare brand, but as the authority on authentic, real-world beauty." I clicked the remote. The first slide read, "Skin first. Filter never." Then came the rest, a campaign using unfiltered photos of real customers across every skin tone and texture. Interactive packaging that encouraged daily affirmation sharing on social media. A partnership with dermatologists and skin influencers who actually used the product, not just promoted it. And a predictive analytics engine Nate had built that tracked conversion trends and customized outreach. "This isn't just branding," Jules added. "This is identity. People aren't buying another jar of cream. They're buying the feeling that their skin is enough." Monica leaned forward. And the influencer outreach? Tara jumped in, her tone calm but persuasive. We've already reached out to micro-influencers with niche audiences. It's not about going viral, it's about building trust. Long-term trust. Ethan's team will sell you flashy numbers. We're offering brand longevity. They all looked at each other. Kara nodded, scribbling something in her notebook. When we wrapped the pitch, there was a pause. Then Monica said, "That was one of the best presentations we've seen. We'll be in touch by the end of the week." We shook hands and left with polite smiles. As soon as the elevator doors closed, Jules whispered, "We crushed that." But I wasn't celebrating yet. Because I knew Ethan. He didn't lose gracefully. Sure enough, the next morning, I received an email from Jordan, one of my former clients, now one of Everglow's minor investors. "Isabella, Ethan's team is going hard behind the scenes. Rumor is he promised them exclusive influencer deals and threw shade at your agency's lack of experience for national campaigns. Just a heads up." It was classic Ethan. Undermine, smear, charm. I called Kara immediately. "Kara, I know this is unconventional," I said, "but I'd like to request a follow-up, just 15 minutes. There's something I need to clarify." She paused. "I'm listening." The next morning, I walked back into the conference room, but this time I wasn't alone. I brought Ava James, a celebrity makeup artist with over 2 million followers. She had worked with everyone, from indie brands to award shows, and had always been vocal about skin health and authenticity. And she was also a longtime client of mine. "I'm here today," Ava said to the execs, "because I've been waiting for a brand to do what Isabella just proposed. And I want to be part of it." You could hear a pin drop. Monica looked floored. Kara was grinning. Even the quiet guy from Ops looked up. And with that, Ethan's exclusive influencer deals were toast. Because Ava was the influencer. The official call came 2 days later. I was sitting in my apartment, sipping lukewarm coffee and staring at a spreadsheet when my phone rang. "Hi, Isabella? This is Monica from Everglow." I stood up. "I won't keep you long. We've decided to award the campaign contract to Cruise and Company." I sank into my chair, stunned. For a moment, I couldn't even speak. "We were incredibly impressed," she continued. "And between us, Ethan's presentation felt recycled. Yours felt like the future." After I hung up, I cried. But not like before. These were tears of validation. Of relief. Of 1,000 buried emotions finally being released. I didn't just win a campaign. I'd beaten him, fairly, completely, and without stooping to his level. But Ethan? He didn't take it well. An hour after the announcement went public, I got a text. "Ethan, cute move with Ava, hope you know this isn't over." I stared at it for a moment, then typed back, "Isabella, you're right. It's just the beginning." When people ask me what true success feels like, I tell them it's not the applause after the win, it's the silence that follows your enemy's failure. But Ethan wasn't the type to accept silence. And he certainly didn't take losing the Everglow deal lying down. Within 48 hours of the announcement, I started receiving strange messages from mutual contacts. Subtle things. A PR manager from a partner firm told me she'd heard that Isabella's agency is too green for national campaigns. An old college connection said she'd heard I stole Everglow's strategy from Ethan. Someone else claimed I'd faked my influencer contacts altogether. It was death by whispers. He was trying to poison my reputation in the exact way he'd climbed the ladder himself, through quiet sabotage, lies masked as concerns, and ego disguised as feedback. And worse? People were starting to listen. It started with a withdrawn proposal. A mid-size beauty brand I'd been negotiating with suddenly went cold. Then an event partnership I'd secured with a major women's wellness expo was quietly reassigned to another agency, Ethan's. It wasn't a coincidence. I needed to act, and fast. But not with anger. Not with panic. I had something more powerful. I had receipts. The first step? I met with Zoe, a former employee of Ethan's who had left under suspicious circumstances about a year ago. She'd been a rising star at his firm, managing some of their biggest campaigns, until suddenly, she was gone. Back then, I'd heard Ethan spin the story, she couldn't handle the pressure. But now that I had some power behind my name, I decided to ask her directly. She agreed to meet me for coffee. "I'll be honest," she said, stirring her espresso. "When you called, I almost said no. But then I heard what he's been doing to you. And it brought everything back." Zoe didn't hold back. She had documentation, emails, Slack screenshots, even contracts, proving that Ethan had been recycling creative pitches from smaller freelancers without crediting them. Worse, he'd overbilled several clients and kept the difference by falsifying consultant fees. "He's always one step ahead because he plays so dirty no one thinks to look closely," she said, handing me a flash drive. "I saved this in case he ever tried to ruin me again." He'd made a career off manipulation. It was time the industry saw it. I didn't want to nuke his entire business overnight. That would make me look vindictive. And frankly, I didn't want to burn down the house, I wanted to make sure he could never get back in the front door. So I went strategic. I hired a crisis PR expert, Mallory, a stone-cold tactician with a calm voice and a Rolodex of editors, attorneys, and journalists. We planned a three-pronged attack: a tell-all podcast interview with Zoe, where she'd share her story without naming Ethan, just describing the patterns and tactics. An anonymous leak of his creative theft to an industry watchdog blog that published investigative pieces on unethical marketing practices. And the kicker, I invited a panel of emerging agency founders to a private Zoom session hosted by a women in business nonprofit, where I shared my experience navigating toxic industry sabotage with anonymous case studies, all based on Ethan, obviously. I never said his name. But everyone knew. And then the dominoes started to fall. The podcast hit 40,000 downloads in its first week. The Watchdog blog posted screenshots of plagiarized pitches that matched campaigns Ethan had run for 3 high-profile clients. And those clients? They dropped him. One by one. I received a text from Mara, a former executive at a skincare company he once represented. "I always suspected Ethan was too good to be true. Thanks for opening our eyes." Suddenly, I became the voice people trusted. The woman who rose above the betrayal. The strategist who built a business on integrity, and still crushed the competition. But Ethan, in true fashion, didn't go down without one last punch. He filed a cease and desist. A letter arrived via email from his legal team, claiming defamation and demanding I retract false and malicious claims made through third-party media. Mallory read it, smirked, and forwarded it to our attorney. "It's full of bluster," she said. "No actual proof. He's trying to scare you." Still, it hit a nerve. I'd worked so hard to build my business on transparency. Now I was being accused of tearing someone else down. But the truth? I wasn't tearing him down. He was crumbling under the weight of his own lies, I was just shining a light on the collapse. The real final blow came 2 weeks later. I was at a networking brunch when I spotted Vance Durham, a legendary branding investor who rarely made appearances. I introduced myself. To my surprise, he smiled and said, "You're the woman who buried Ethan Walker." I froze. He laughed. "Don't worry. That's a compliment. I've been watching your moves. Clean, calculated. Not desperate. Very rare these days." Then he added, "If you ever consider expanding, give me a call." It was surreal. 3 months ago, I was sitting on my bathroom floor wondering if I'd ever work in this industry again. Now? I was getting investment offers and keynote invitations. And Ethan? He posted a cryptic tweet that night: "Some people build. Some people destroy. Some people manipulate and pretend they're heroes. Stay sharp." It barely got 10 likes. Because no one believed him anymore. The illusion had cracked. And I wasn't done yet. People love revenge stories where the villain gets destroyed in one big, fiery explosion. But in real life? The most satisfying takedowns happen slowly. One conversation at a time. One client at a time. One burned bridge he never saw coming. Ethan didn't just lose his reputation. He lost the thing he valued more than anything, control. And I made sure he watched every second of it. After the fallout from the anonymous leaks and Zoe's podcast, Ethan's agency was in survival mode. I knew that because I still had eyes and ears inside the industry. One of his former interns had joined a recruitment firm and gave me occasional updates. Quietly. Discreetly. 3 of his long-term clients dropped out last week, she whispered during a call. He's been calling in favors, but no one wants to touch his brand right now. Exactly what I'd planned. But this wasn't about just revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming the space he stole from me, and from so many others he had stepped on to get ahead. So I started reaching out. Not with arrogance. With strategy. The first was Aria Bloom, a sustainable skincare brand I had once helped Ethan win by ghostwriting the pitch. I had spent weeks crafting the perfect campaign vision, and he had passed it off as his own. Now, with my agency up and running and Everglow under our belt, I reached out directly. Her assistant set up a meeting. I knew Aria was cautious, she had probably heard the rumors from both sides. But when we finally spoke over video chat, she said something that made me pause. I always suspected you were the real mind behind that campaign, she said. It just never felt like Ethan's voice. That one sentence? It lit a fire in my chest. I gave her a full audit of their current marketing direction and offered 3 strategies we could implement immediately to boost their brand authority. Within 72 hours, she signed a 6-month retainer with my agency. Ethan didn't just lose a client. He lost the face of his portfolio. Next came Mira Hair Systems, a tech beauty hybrid Ethan had been circling for years. He'd used my contacts to get in the room with them before he fired me. So I called Lena Patel, their CMO, and asked for 15 minutes of her time. We'd never met, but I came prepared. I knew her pain points, her 2024 goals, and even the influencer network they were trying, and failing, to grow. She was skeptical at first. Is this about Ethan? She asked bluntly. No, I replied. This is about you not wasting another quarter on someone who doesn't understand your audience. We scheduled a full strategy session. 2 weeks later, I had another signed client. This one worth double what Aria had paid. And again, Ethan's name never came up, because his shadow no longer mattered. But the final blow? That came when Ethan tried to salvage his credibility by launching a webinar series titled Scaling with Integrity: How to Build Client Trust in 2025. The irony could have flattened a skyscraper. He advertised it all over LinkedIn, trying to rebrand himself as some wounded warrior of the marketing world. And just as he went live for the second session, a new story dropped on Brandline, the industry's most read ethics column. Title: The Whisper Network is getting louder, and it's coming for the good guys too. The article didn't name him, but it didn't have to. It detailed how a prominent agency head had plagiarized pitch decks, underpaid creatives, and orchestrated blackball campaigns against former employees. The timing wasn't a coincidence. Mallory had worked her PR magic again. By the end of that week, Ethan canceled the webinar series. His registration numbers plummeted. His apology tweets flopped. And in every room he used to dominate, there was now a quiet question hanging in the air: what did Ethan do this time? Meanwhile, my agency was thriving. I hired 2 new account managers, expanded our campaign services to include podcast branding, and signed a contract with a high-profile tech startup that used to be on Ethan's wish list. He saw the announcement on LinkedIn and left a passive-aggressive comment: looks like everyone's jumping on the trend train these days. I didn't respond. But a well-known marketing analyst did. Some people are the trend. Mic drop. I didn't destroy Ethan in one fell swoop. I dismantled him piece by piece. The way he dismantled my career, my confidence, and my livelihood. But the difference? I didn't stoop to his level. I built something bigger, better, and unshakable. He played dirty. I played smart. He tried to silence me. I gave the industry something louder, proof. Now he's on the outside, watching me build an empire with the clients, connections, and campaigns he thought he owned. And the best part? I'm just getting started. You'd think after stripping Ethan of his clients, ruining his reputation, and turning his own tricks against him, I'd be done. And honestly, I thought I was. Until the invitation came. It was poetic. The West Coast Creative Leadership Conference, an elite gathering of agency heads, CMOs, and top-tier talent scouts. I'd applied to speak years ago when I was working under Ethan, and he'd accidentally forgotten to submit my name. I later found out he submitted his own speech, using my topic. This time, they asked me. Not only that, they asked me to be the closing keynote speaker. I smiled when I read the email. Not because I wanted to show off. Because I knew Ethan would be there too. And I wasn't going to drag him in my speech. No. I was going to let my story, and my success, speak so loudly that the entire room would see what he had tried to bury. The night before the event, I stayed up going over my keynote. My speech was called, How to Rebuild When They Try to Erase You, Leadership After Loss, Betrayal, and *T. Every word came from my experience, not just the pain, but the power that came after. I didn't name Ethan. I didn't need to. My story was about every woman who'd been gaslit, pushed aside, and told she was too emotional to lead. It was about rebuilding from rock bottom, and doing it with so much grace and skill that the people who tried to break you couldn't even look you in the eye. The day of the speech, the ballroom was packed. Hundreds of creatives, brand leaders, and agency execs filled the seats. I scanned the crowd. And there he was. Ethan. Sitting near the back. Alone. Wearing a stiff smile and that same old smug posture. But I could see the cracks in it now. He looked smaller somehow. Less important. He locked eyes with me once. Then looked away. Good. Because when I took the stage, I wasn't thinking about him. I was thinking about her. The version of me who sat in her car crying the night he fired me. The one who doubted her voice, her worth, her future. This speech was for her. I wasn't fired because I failed, I began. I was fired because I succeeded, too much, too visibly, too loudly for someone else's comfort. You could feel the air shift in the room. I was told I was hard to manage, too direct, not quite ready, but the truth was, I made people look at what they'd rather keep hidden. I asked for credit. I asked for fair pay. I asked to be seen. Nods from the audience. I didn't mention the names. But I told the truth. About stolen ideas. About whisper networks. About being erased, then rising anyway. And when I ended with, you can fire me, block me, even try to erase my name, but you will remember the results I left behind. The room stood up. Not out of politeness. Out of recognition. Afterward, people swarmed the stage. CMOs from companies I'd once only dreamed of working with handed me cards, asked to collaborate, invited me to lead panels. But the best part? One of Ethan's oldest clients, someone he hadn't lost yet, came up to me with a thoughtful look on her face. I've worked with Ethan for years, she said. But after today, I want to work with someone who actually knows how to lead. She handed me her contact info. Just like that, another domino fell. And this time, I didn't have to lift a finger. Later, I saw Ethan again in the hallway. He tried to walk past me like we were strangers. But I stopped him. Hey, Ethan, I said calmly. He turned. He didn't smile. His eyes were tired. You know, I said, when you got me fired, I thought that was the end of my career. He opened his mouth to say something, but I held up my hand. I'm not angry anymore. just grateful. He frowned. Grateful? Yes, I said. You showed me exactly who not to become. And then I walked away. Back at my office the next week, I framed the conference badge. Not because it was my biggest win, but because it was the full circle moment. The final chapter in a story I didn't even know I had the strength to write. Now, I run a thriving agency. I lead with transparency, empathy, and strategy. I hire women like the one I used to be, smart, unpolished, underestimated, and I let them shine. Ethan? He's still out there. Still trying to recover. Still waiting for someone to give him back the power he abused. But no one's coming. Because the industry doesn't forget forever. Especially when the people you burn come back on fire.